When the desert sands are stirred by the wind, it becomes clear that Hazrat Umar was an exemplary figure of courage, obedience, and dedication. He excelled in archery, wrestling, and horseback riding, and he had learned to read and write in a time when such skills were rare. After his education, according to tradition, he focused on earning a living. He engaged in the most challenging trades of the Arabs and traveled to distant lands for business, gaining vast experience. His self-respect, high courage, keen understanding, and foresight were the results of these experiences. He quickly solved problems among ordinary people in the tribes with his extraordinary wisdom and planning. He was 27 years old when the Islamic Revolution began in the Arab region. The call of Tawheed, the oneness of God, began to echo through the valleys of Mecca. This message was met with disbelief by you and the polytheistic Arabs. However, you were deeply moved by it. Those who knew that you had become Muslim became your sworn enemies. Your own family, who had become Muslim, was beaten so severely that they grew tired of hitting him. Despite this, the intoxication of Islam was such that once it took hold, there was no turning back. None of the forces could bring you down from Islam. Just as Sayyidina Umar Farooq was a leading figure among the Quraysh, Abu Jahl was a prominent enemy of the Muslims. One day, the Prophet prayed, "O Allah, make Islam triumphant through either Umar bin Khattab or Abu Jahl." This honor, however, was destined for Umar Farooq. If a prophet prays, how can it not be effective? The greatest enemy of Islam became a friend and companion. Allah blessed Umar Farooq with the gift of Islam. When he embraced Islam, it caused a great upheaval. Those who opposed Islam gathered around his house, chanting, "Sabah Umar! Sabah Umar!" Umar had become a Muslim. But who knew that Umar Farooq had discovered the purpose of his life? Sayyidina Umar Farooq ushered in a new era for Islam. At that time, nearly 40 people had embraced Islam, but they were living in a state of helplessness. Performing religious duties and openly declaring oneself as a Muslim was not an easy task. You gathered the idolaters and boldly declared your Islam. No one had the courage to stand against you. Your uncle saw that Islam was new and thought the idolaters would not harm anyone, so he honored your declaration. However, Amirul Mumineen, leader of the faithful, had witnessed the oppression and helplessness of Muslims before Islam. Because of his love for Muslims, he rejected that honor. Instead, he chose to stand with ordinary Muslims, ready to face the difficulties imposed by the idolaters with steadfastness. He announced that from now on, prayers would be offered in the Kaaba with the congregation. This was the first time that Muslims prayed openly in the Kaaba. As a reward for his bravery, the Prophet's court named him Farooq, the one who distinguishes between right and wrong. As the number of Muslims in Mecca increased, the arrogance and pride of the Quraysh also grew. Previously, they used to torment people out of bloodthirstiness and religious zeal. But now, they also resorted to political exploitation. The lives of Muslims in Mecca became increasingly difficult. With the Prophet's permission, Muslims began migrating to different lands, including Medina. All Muslims migrated secretly, but Sayyidina Umar Farooq sought the Prophet's permission before his migration. Upon receiving permission, the dignity with which he began his journey is worth mentioning. He hung a sword around his neck, pulled out an arrow, held it in his hand, came to the Kaaba, performed tawaf, circumambulation, 7 times, and offered 2 units of prayer at the place of Ibrahim. The chiefs of the Quraysh were sitting in small groups around the Kaaba. He approached each group and said, "Look at this face. If anyone wants to make their children orphans and their wives widows, let them come to this valley and confront me. Listen, I am migrating to Medina. Who is ready to challenge me?" No one dared to compete with him, and after that, the group migrated to Medina, where they gathered in preparation for the arrival of the Prophet himself. The Prophet established a brotherhood between the Muhajirin, emigrants, and the Ansar, helpers. The Ansar set examples of selflessness in Medina. Muslims were now able to pray in peace in Medina, but soon the great battle of Badr came. In this battle, Amirul Mu'mineen showed remarkable courage and determination in support of the Prophet. Despite the odds, Muslims were destined for victory, and the disbelievers faced defeat. During this time, the leaders of the Quraysh were captured, and a debate arose about what to do with them. While Abu Bakr Siddiq and other companions suggested mercy, Amirul Mu'mineen's opinion was that they should all be killed. The Prophet, peace be upon him, followed the opinion of Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq and the majority of companions, and they were released after paying a ransom. In addition to Badr, he served in other significant battles like Uhud, Khandak, Khyber, and the conquest of Mecca. After the death of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, he assumed the Caliphate. During his 10-year Caliphate, he conquered the great empires of Persia, Rome, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. He overthrew the rulers of the time and established Islam across the known world. During his Caliphate, he organized the administration of the country, establishing important departments and dividing the empire into provinces and districts. Each province had strict governance. He issued orders for the construction of cities and established public institutions like prisons and education centers. He also sent scholars and companions to different regions to teach hadith. He was very careful in the transmission of hadith and appointed jurists in all regions. He consulted the companions on various legal matters and gave them guidance. He expanded Masjidin Bawi, built new mosques, and ensured they were well maintained. The defining characteristic of his era of caliphate was justice and equity. For the king, the noble, the rich, the poor, the loved, and the stranger, there was only one law. His justice was not limited to Muslims, it extended to non-Muslims, including Jews and Christians. He was naturally intelligent and had a clear vision. At least 20 verses were revealed in alignment with his views, known as Umar's agreements. These include decisions like the treatment of prisoners from the Battle of Badr, the call to prayer, Adhan, the prohibition of alcohol, the appointment of Ibrahim as a prophet, and the wailing of the Prophet's wives. His love for the Prophet made him highly skilled in implementing Islamic commandments. Even when faced with complex issues, he would consult the companions. His morals and values were the true reflection of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. His character embodied sincerity, justice, and truth. Despite the promise of paradise, his fear of God and desire for divine approval were remarkable. He spent entire nights in worship, remembering and glorifying Allah. He would recite verses in prayer that described the greatness and majesty of God, and these verses would deeply move him. In the heart of Sayyidina Umar Farooq, there was immense love for the Prophet and a commitment to following the Sunnah. He was a true devotee of prophethood and did not shy away from sacrificing for the sake of his family, relatives, and loved ones. He was indifferent to worldly desires and wealth. His life was simple. He ate ordinary bread and fried olives without any luxury. After becoming caliph, he became even more cautious in his lifestyle, living with humility and care. His modest personality was evident to all. One morning, while leading the prayer, he was attacked by a person who struck him 6 times with a dagger. The wounds were so severe that they could not be healed. In his final moments, he made important wills. He remained in a state of suffering for 3 days, and on the 1st of Muharram, the great light of Islam was extinguished on the 24th. He was laid to rest beside his beloved master, the Prophet, peace be upon him. May Allah grant us peace and the opportunity to follow the Quran and Hadith. Ameen.